everybody, and welcome to the Friday Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who, as far as I know, has never done a Facebook Live Q&A. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello, you are correct. I never have, but I do love watching Bruce Arena do them.
This is the second or third? Third. I'll say this, he's good at them as well.
He is, and I love that he got a question about, like, has it been difficult to get back into coaching the national team? And he's like, no, it's all pretty much the same. I guarantee you he was not doing Facebook Live conversations in 2002.
Yes, there was no Facebook. There was no Facebook.
That's why I guarantee it.
Always the sure thing.
Yep.
Always the sure thing. So if you haven't seen, a couple of days ago, Wednesday afternoon, I think, Bruce Arena did a Facebook Live Q&A and dropped all kinds of information about his upcoming roster for the big World Cup qualifiers against Honduras and Panama. Must win, all caps, sirens. He even told us...
He disagrees. He said our goal is to be aggressive and come away with at least a point.
No, he said 3 points.
He said a point. He said
Did he really?
He said ideally 3 points, but at least a point.
Okay, well, I guess
in the away game, yeah.
All right, yeah. So 4 points total from All right, we're trying to win though.
Yes, I would agree with the Claxon 3 points, 3 points, but I think Bruce Arena has wisely not said we're definitely getting 6 points in these two games.
Okay, yeah, because you guarantee it, then you don't get it. Things look bad, right?
Yeah.
Okay. He also said the actual roster will be dropped March 15th, which is next Wednesday, I believe. That is not a thing that Jurgen Klinsmann ever did.
Nope.
I'm not going to keep comparing Klinsmann to Arena, except to say this overarching point, which is I believe Klinsmann did some Q&As like this, but we never got the level of detail that we got from Bruce Arena.
No.
Because here are some of the things he said. We're going to relay to you what we got from this, what we took from this. We read between the lines on a few things. We also pretty much figured out what 80% of the roster he's got is and where the question marks are and what to watch for in the next week.
All right.
So later in today's show, we'll be telling you basically which MLS games to watch.
Yeah.
So you can basically compare who's up against whom in terms of winning a spot on the roster.
Look at you saying whom. Good job, buddy.
I think I got it right.
I believe you did. It's the object.
Peyton will let me know if I if I did not. All right, so the big number I got from this is Bruce said literally, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm working with basically 40 players.
Yeah,
and from that, I'm going to select 23 or 25.
I'm sure he meant roughly 40. He said 40. So what we've done on our chalkboard, which I believe you tweeted a photo of, we've gone for 40 exactly. You could probably add 1 or 2 more. You probably can't take anybody off. So maybe like 40 to 42.
Yeah.
But we've gone with 40 exactly.
Yep. So if you check our Twitter timeline, you'll see basically the pool of 40 players that Bruce Arena is selecting from. We believe... and we've double checked as much of all of these, right? We've really done the homework here. The pool of 40 players he's selecting from for the Honduras and Panama games. We think, actually, we know he's going to name 23 or 25, which to me is a clear indication of one thing.
Yep.
Timmy Chandler and Jermaine Jones, who are suspended for the Honduras game. I believe that we will win.
Yep.
I believe that they will be on the roster for Panama.
Yes, I agree.
And so could you work our listeners through the mechanics of how that will work then?
Yeah, essentially he'll call 25 people into camp, but he'll only name like the 23 for the first game. After that first game, he'll probably drop 2 people, or if there are injuries, then he'll remove them and add Timmy Chandler in and Jermaine Jones in because their suspensions will be completed. Yeah,
and what that means is that Jones and Chandler will be with the team from beginning to end, right? They'll probably take part in practice sessions in the build-up to Honduras, but obviously with the idea that they won't be playing.
Yeah.
But it also means when we select our roster, we've got to select a Chandler replacement and a Jones replacement.
Yeah,
that's
why we've essentially, when we did our, we're pretty sure they're going to be on the roster list, we have the pretty sure and then the not so sure. The pretty sure is 22 players, which means that there are
25, right?
Yeah, there are 3 spots left. Yeah, but Timmy Chandler and Jones are on the pretty sure list. Yeah. And I think that's because one of the first questions Bruce Arena got was, who are the players in Europe that have impressed you or that you think merit consideration?
Actually, the question was vaguer than that. It's just how are the players in Europe doing?
Yeah, give us an update. which makes me wonder if maybe that was a plant question.
Yeah,
because he had his response ready.
Bruce, why are you so handsome?
That would be a more obvious plant question. He got a couple of those in there though. Are you still mad about the handball in 2002? Which made him laugh, to be fair. But he said, he started with Fabian Johnson and Christian Pulisic. He listed John Brooks, and then he specifically went and mentioned Timmy Chandler and talked about the work he was doing with Eintracht Frankfurt.
Yep.
Yeah, so I think that means to me that Timmy Chandler is on that list.
Big one, he also was very, very, very specific about Jeff Cameron, and to say that Jeff has played, I think he'd played one game for Stoke, and he was about to play that day, and he did. We checked the stats, right? Cameron played 90 minutes against Manchester City in midweek. So Cameron now has 2 90 minutes under his belt, and there are 2 more weekends to go until the actual game. Jeff Cameron is going to be on this roster, which is kind of reassuring.
Yeah, and I think the same goes as long as we're sticking with England. Oh, and he did mention Bobby Wood in Germany, obviously.
Yes, of course.
And then in England, I think he mentioned DeAndre Yedlin as well, and kind of basically said, he's picked up an injury. We'll keep an eye on that, but barring that injury, he's definitely on there.
He seemed to think it was okay, right? And just to get this down then, that means that Yedlin is probably our starting right back, or Timmy Chandler is our starting right back, but Chandler's suspended, so Yedlin is our starting right back for the Honduras game.
Yeah. And that's why on our guaranteed list, I think we have Graham Zusi up there, because he is I think, going to be the, kind of fill-in right back for now.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically, Graham Zusi is the third choice right back, but we have one suspended and one with, a questionable injury, so therefore Zusi makes that first 25-player roster because it needs 3 right backs on it.
Yes.
So there we go, right back's done. Zusi, in reverse order, Zusi, Chandler, Yedlin.
That said, in the pool, though, you do still have, it seems, Eric Lehigh. He mentioned Eric Lehigh and the work he was doing with Nottingham Forest. He also mentioned him as a left back. More on that later. And in talking about foreign players, specifically in England, he also included Tim Ream. So I think they're in the pool, but I wouldn't say that they're on that 22 to 25-player roster.
Do you want to talk about left backs then? Because that is the big question.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with one I thought was an excellent question that someone asked, which was essentially a follow-up question from a month ago. Do you remember Bruce Arena had said in an earlier Q&A that Fabian Johnson... he can play left back, he can play left midfield, but what Fabian Johnson has asked me, Bruce Arena, to do is give him a position and stick with it. And it seems like Bruce has honoured that request. The question today, and sorry, I didn't look who asked the questions, because you're asking in the comments, right, on Facebook Live. Someone said, which position is it going to be? Where's Fabian going to go? And Bruce Arena said...
He plays on a regular basis as a left-sided midfielder. If we can, that's where we want to play him. But we want to find a position for him and play it, and have him play it on a consistent basis.
So it's almost a promise to play him left midfield. But then, which, by the way, I think we're on board with... I'm actually on board with either.
I'm on board with that.
Okay.
I think so.
But then later on when he's asked, the second really good question he was asked is, who's your starting left back?
Against Honduras, yeah.
Which is a tough question. And to Bruce's credit, he just said, there are many options, we're not sure.
Yeah.
And he said, and then the first
name
then
he listed some options, He listed 7 names. One of them, the first one he listed was Fabian Johnson. With the immediate follow-up of, but as I said, we would prefer to play him as a midfielder.
Yeah.
But, if we can't, then we won't.
But what I take from that is that he wants to play him as a left midfielder.
Yep, agreed.
But he's not fully confident in any other left back.
Also agreed.
Which is semi-scary. And also makes me wonder who has to do what in the next couple of weeks to push Fabian Johnson into midfield and to take the left-back spot for their own.
Right. And so the candidates there would be Jorge Villafana. He mentioned him first. Then Greg Garza, DeMarcus Beasley, Tim Ream, Matt Beasler, and Eric Lehigh.
Yeah, Lehigh really did come in last there. Which is why I'm not thinking he's going to be on the roster.
Okay. The only reason why I think he might is just because he mentioned him... He went out of his way to mention him in the very beginning. And then he sort of snuck it in at the end. And then it was like, and then, Eric Lehigh, he's done both for Nottingham Forest. So, that's an option as well.
Both meaning right back and left back.
Yes.
You think, right?
And it was odd to me that got kind of thrown in there. So maybe he's in there with more consideration than we think.
Something just occurred to me. Is Eric Lehigh the Benny Feilhaber / Sasha Kleston of Europe?
How so?
The guy that a lot of US fans are like, why isn't this guy playing? Someone call up this guy under the Klinsmann regime. And then, now Klinsmann's gone, now it's more realistic to call him in.
I would say he's the Dax McCarty, because I think the Benny Feilhaber / Sasha Kleston is Danny Williams. I think we've had a lot of people wonder why Danny Williams doesn't get any consideration.
He wasn't mentioned here either, and we're going to assume he's not going to be part of this roster. He's not even on the 40. Part of the reason is I don't think Danny Williams is a bad player. I don't think Bruce Arena thinks Danny Williams is a bad player. We are just deep in midfield.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why we very quickly made a list of players who weren't mentioned.
Oh yeah, we did. Yeah.
And it was Alfredo Morales, Terrence Boyd, Aaron Johansson, Perry Kitchen, Danny Williams, and then Julian Green. Although Julian Green was asked about later. So maybe, and he said, and that's the thing that I really appreciated about Bruce Arena, is that it wasn't even just, we're keeping an eye on this guy. I mean, he said that a lot. We're keeping an eye. We're monitoring the progress. They'll be considered roughly.
There was a lot of, we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks.
Yes, but they're in with consideration, or they deserve consideration. But he also was very clever, and I'm not saying it was like a tactical thing. I'm saying it was just like he was smart to say, We've seen him play twice. We've seen him once in person. We had a person there watching him. One of my assistants went. I talked to him on the phone. Like, he gave you those like specific pieces of information that show that he is there on the ball working on this every single day.
He literally said, I went to see Julian Green play for Stuttgart once, and he didn't say who, but he had someone else on the staff go and see him play another time in Germany. This wasn't like they found a stream on YouTube. They went to Stuttgart or the away game and saw Green play. And the update from that is Green apparently hasn't played the last couple of weeks. I think he fell out of the starting 11, but he's expected to play this weekend, and someone will be there to watch him this weekend as well.
Yep. So that's the plan with Julian Green. But moving back to left back.
Sorry, I got very.
Yeah, I think I took us down another tangent off of your tangent, which was a tangent. Who knows?
Okay, we put Villafana on the board, right? We put him as not a starting left back, but as our choice that will make the roster. Why is that?
I think it's because we put Fabian Johnson in midfield. And it just seems like that's what Bruce Arena wants to do. I think it's what makes the most sense for him. And frankly, I think it's what gives him the best attacking options. And it gives him a very balanced midfield, too. We noticed that.
But does it give him the best left-backy options?
I really don't know. I can't say, because I can't say with any confidence how good Jorge Villafana is, because I haven't seen him at club level. He was not playing for a while, which is why he was in that January camp. I'll say that one of our conclusions coming out of the January-February camp was we would be okay with Jorge Villafana starting at left back.
We were, if I recall, very, very excited about the 1-2s Villafana was making happen. He was so good at bringing the ball out of the back and playing a quick exchange of passes and getting forward that way, instead of head down and sprint or just trying to kick the ball in the channel kind of thing. And if the US is going to do this kind of, I think of a Bruce Arena team as something of a counter-attacking team. It's like not like a Borussia Dortmund counter-press type thing, but it's definitely win the ball back and go, right? And Villafana, I think, is kind of key to that. The downside is Villafana not a regular starter for Santos Laguna.
Right. So that gives you pause for concern. But then Greg Garza, who is the starting left back for Atlanta, he gave us pause for concern when he played for the U.S. national team. So,
which is kind of the key test.
Anyway. And so it's a relatively small sample size on both accounts because MLS has just started. But you have those two national team games. So I think we put Villafana in there because he is routinely the one who is listed first. I would also add, I know it's like a little bit conspiratorial, but I'm cool with it. Arena was asked...
You love a conspiracy.
Yeah, why not? Arena was asked, give us an update on the players in Europe. And he mentioned Germany, he mentioned England, and maybe it's just because of a lack of options. He then talked about Liga MX for a while.
Right, he did,
And so it felt a little bit...
because there's no one in the Netherlands that's necessarily on his radar for this specific game.
That's a key amendment there. Good job, yeah.
There's no one in France who's on the radar for this game.
Yeah, you could add, that list that we just went over, you could add Rubio Rubin, you could add DeSavio Payne, and then you have the other players that we mentioned.
You could in terms of, talented American players, but not guys that are in consideration for a must-win Hex World Cup qualifier.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think what I go to in the end is that when he lists left-backs, it's usually Fabian Johnson if we have to, but Villafana, Greg Garza, DeMarcus Beasley in that order routinely.
DeMarcus Beasley. That's the one I want to talk about. I'm very confused about this. When we saw him named to the January camp, we saw the word I think is a surfeit of left backs. Yeah. Because in the end you had Villafana, you had Garza, you had Taylor Kemp, and you had DeMarcus Beasley. I think they all made the final roster as well.
I think Kemp might have gotten sent home. I think he was one because I thought he was going to stick around and then he got his marching orders.
All right, and we saw him for DC against Sporting KC. He looked okay, but he didn't stand out as this guy should start in a World Cup qualifier.
No, he did not.
No, he didn't, right? DeMarcus Beasley, I thought he was there just as an experienced old bald head shaved head to help people along.
I think both, but sure.
I think to move people along to help get people familiar as like a guy that Bruce Arena trusts and knows, a good guy. Beasley seems like a good dude. Right?
He does.
So it's like we want him on the roster because he's a good dude.
Do you remember the video of their first training session when he had everybody come together and he gave that kind of talk the night before training started?
Yeah.
And he was like, nobody remembers that. Well, except for DeMarcus. So I think he was definitely he was definitely there for leadership chemistry. Yeah. But then maybe we have another theory about why DeMarcus Beasley might. Yeah. And at this point, I would say if we're saying who is the other left back that gets added, because we have Villafana as a left back, we have Fabian Johnson at left midfield, that means you need one more.
Yep.
I think it might be DeMarcus Beasley.
Because here's the thing, Beasley actually played in that January camp, right? I think he only got a little while.
Yeah,
but
he did.
He got on the field. He played. He also, Bruce Arena specifically mentioned him as having a really good game and starting the season strongly for Houston against Seattle in that win, Houston win over Seattle.
Yep.
And then
the big one. Here's the big one.
Add this idea, we are playing Honduras first.
Yep.
Honduras is starting 3 forwards in their most recent World Cup qualifier against Trinidad and Tobago. All play for Houston.
They do. Houston have 400 players. Yeah, it was Kyoto, Ellis, and Boniek Garcia were that starting front three.
Left to right, right? And Kyoto on the left, MLS Goal of the Week winner. Ellis is the centre forward, and Boniek Garcia on the right.
For Honduras,
For Honduras, and they all play for Houston Dynamo. I think maybe DeMarcus Beasley makes the roster for knowledge and just for being, an old head at left back because it's a must-win World Cup qualifier. You want someone with Hex experience and inside info on the players we're facing. DeMarcus. I've now convinced myself in the course of this conversation. I want to go over and add him to the chalkboard.
There's Jose Escalante as well. I don't know how many appearances he has for the national team, but he is the 4th Honduran we mentioned. I can't believe how much we've talked about Houston in the past couple of shows. Just because in that preview, I was kind of maybe down on them a little bit. I thought it was going to be kind of brutalist soccer, where it was kind of smash and grab, and instead they've become a very important team when it comes to the U.S. national team and our upcoming World Cup qualifiers and goals of the week as well. So there you go. Yeah,
turns out. So we're saying maybe Beasley then.
I think maybe Beasley, and then maybe Greg Garza is the other option with Eric Lehigh on the outside potentially.
And Tim Ream. I feel like Tim Ream's an outside shot, and Matt Beasley. He also named Matt Beasley, but we're essentially talking about centre backs who can play left back.
At that point, we are. Yeah, okay. And I'm not a huge fan of that. So
we'll know more March 15th, but just so you know the options, I feel like we spent a long time on left back.
I'm all right with that. Well, then let's move way away from left back to center back. Because I think based on kind of what he said and the detail he went into on Jeff Cameron, I think it seems like he is banking on Jeff Cameron.
He's Jeff Cameron.
Yeah.
Right?
And then I always want to say that he talked about Jeff Cameron as a defensive midfielder, but that was because he was asked about Jeff Cameron being a defensive midfielder. Jeff Cameron's going to be a center back if he's fit and ready to go. So too is John Brooks. So I think those are the 2 automatic conclusions. The other one that he
probably the starters if they're
yeah. And then the only other one that we kind of have on our will make the roster list that I have a little bit of pause about is Omar Gonzalez.
Yes, he did say Omar Gonzalez has been playing well for Pachuca, I believe he plays for. And then that made me think he makes the roster because it's no secret that Arena is a big fan of Omar Gonzalez.
Exactly.
Omar Gonzalez's best years in Major League Soccer were with Bruce Arena as his coach at the LA Galaxy. Right. I think, as I understand it, they're pretty tight.
Yeah, right? I think so.
So you got a must-win game. You are picking your centre backs.
You want one of your guys in there.
Yeah, and it's not. It's a little bit of favoritism.
2 of your guys, because we're saying Beasley, but yeah.
It's a little bit of favoritism, but it's also just a guy you trust and a guy who's informed, so why not?
Yeah, I mean, why not? So then the only other options as to why not would be, those would be 3.
Yep.
Usually you want the 4 center backs.
Yeah.
That leaves from the pool that we kind of came up with, that leaves you with Hedgerman, Matt Hedges, and Zimmerman.
Okay, we've got to stop.
Yeah.
We've got to stop with the portmanteau.
Must we?
Because it is true that they are separate players. Yeah. You could call up Matt Hedges and not Walker Zimmerman.
You could, I suppose.
You
I don't know if you can. I think they're combined. They don't want to be broken apart.
Here's something about Zimmerman. Zimmerman was selected in one of those January camp games and played really, really well. Remember, he was very impressive. He was quite aggressive and won every ball. Zimmerman has also been linked, I think, this week with a possible move to the Bundesliga. I think it was Wolfsburg were interested. I'm just saying Zimmerman's stock is absolutely on the rise.
That's true.
Matt Hedges, I think, had to drop out of January camp because he got an injury. Remember that? But he's also, MLS Defender of the Year 2016. He's someone Arena's aware of.
Right. Arena also aware of Tim Ream, Matt Beasler, Orozco, and then I think the one that we probably both want to throw in there would be Steve Birnbaum.
Yes. And again, played, you said 90 minutes both games, January camp? Yeah.
180 minutes overall. I think 90 times 2. I know math.
And he's been around the US national team for at least a year or 2 now. He feels like basically a regular.
Yeah.
And if he walked into the USMNT bar, everyone would say, hey.
Yeah. Steve. Yeah. And, captain of DC United. And probably the most stabilizing force in that DC United defense when we saw them play against Sporting KC.
Yep.
So I think for that reason, and I just kind of like Steve Birnbaum. I might throw him in there as the 4th center back.
Set piece danger.
Yep.
For one thing. Okay. Should we move away from the defense?
Sure. To goalkeeper? Or do you want to go to midfield?
Let's do a goalkeeper, then we'll have a whole defense sorted out. Right?
Yeah.
Defense wins championships / World Cup qualifications?
Yeah.
All right. Goalkeeper's actually a little tricky, right? Because we're in a spot where Tim Howard is coming back from injury.
Right.
Brad Guzan is not really playing at Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
Nick Romando emerged as the sort of, I want to say, unexpected first choice in the January camp. Not least because we saw his name on the roster, and again, we thought this is a DeMarcus Beasley type situation. He's just there to help people out. Nope, he's the starting keeper.
Yeah, I mean, and he's basically, Arena was asked about this, about goalkeeper specifically. He said Ramondo, Bingham, and Robles were all called in. Nick had a little bit of an edge, and so he's a possibility for the roster. Again, everybody who we think is going to make the roster was listed as a possibility for the roster.
So is a possibility is a euphemism for write him down on it. Put him on the chalkboard, tell him, Darryl.
Pretty much.
He was sending us coded messages.
I think so. Definitely to us specifically. But it is a weird situation because I can't even remember how many years ago the goalkeeper we were just like, yep, we're good there. Don't even need to talk about it. But center back, I don't know if we have any options there. And now all of a sudden we have tons of center backs. Goalkeeper is a question mark because Nick Raimondo is Nick Raimondo, but he does not fill you with confidence the way an informed Tim Howard or an informed Brad Guzan would.
And I want to say, just to clarify and to check what you were saying, when you say doesn't fill you with confidence, that's usually like a way of saying makes me nervous.
Yeah.
But do you mean that, or do you mean makes me not as confident as seeing Tim Howard and his beard?
I think if I'm being honest, I will say it's essentially that because we've had Tim Howard and Brad Guzan for so long, I think of Nick Raimondo as a number 3 goalkeeper. That's what he's been. Yeah. And so to all of a sudden have him as like potentially a number 1, it's just like, no, he's a number 3. Like that's how it's always been. And it's not as though he's the young upstart who's been biding his time and now's his opportunity and he's seizing it. It's sort of like, no, he's been the number 3 and these other 2 guys are hurt, so maybe he'll be the number 1, we're not sure.
Yeah.
So it's not, that does sound, I guess, disrespectful, but it's just that that's what he's been. So to all of a sudden have him be, if your third choice quarterback is suddenly your starting quarterback, that doesn't make you confident. It doesn't mean you hate the idea. It just means you're like, all right, I guess so.
So to recap, the situation is an injured Tim Howard and not playing Brad Guzan. Or your third choice, Nick Raimondo, elevated to first choice.
Well, it's okay because Brad Guzan was playing the day that Bruce Arena did that Facebook Live. I think he got confused.
Yeah, we checked for a Brad Guzan game on Wednesday, March 8th, and there was not one.
Yeah, and there was not a Middlesbrough Premier League 2 U23 game. No. So, no. So, I think maybe just a little bit confused. With all that said, I don't think it is Nick Raimondo starting. I think it will probably be Brad Guzan unless Timmy Howard looks like he is 100% fit and ready to go.
If he plays at all. So he may play for Colorado this weekend and play out of his mind. And then he's got another weekend to play, and then he's the US starting keeper. He may not make the field for Colorado this weekend, and then he doesn't even make the roster because he's not fit. So we'll find out this weekend.
So the specific things Arena had to say about them, Brad Guzan is likely to play this today, but we've been following his progress. He's likely to be included. Tim Howard is coming off an injury. If he stays healthy and makes progress, then he has strong consideration.
Okay, so I'm going to mark defenders and goalkeepers down as discussed.
Yes.
Check mark.
Well done. So we're going to move on to midfield and attack in just a second. But first, a word from today's sponsor, Blue Apron.
Yeah, today's sponsor is Blue Apron. They are the number 1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. Their mission is to make incredible home cooking accessible to everyone.
And that's a key point because I do a podcast for a living. My wife is in school.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, another one. I haven't told you about it. It's called Blue Apron. It's just a podcast about the food. It is not. But my wife is in school, so we're kind of on a budget here. And so generally we cook what we can afford, and we cook kind of similar things. But doing Blue Apron, it is you can spend under $10 a person for a delicious meal, and it allows you to cook things that you wouldn't otherwise cook or you wouldn't otherwise be able to afford because it's suddenly like, ooh, here's an exotic spice that I wouldn't go out and buy from some small store.
Or this may just reflect my food ignorance, but it allows you to cook things you've never heard of.
Also very true. Yes. Yes. That is the new super grain, which I forget the name of, but yes, just like that.
Not so long ago, I cooked...
Farah, right?
Yes, I had farah, recently I cooked a Laotian vegetable larb, which I didn't know what larb was. It turned out to be like a lettuce, heavy lettuce leaf filled with coconut rice and then like soy-glazed mushrooms, jalapenos, and a couple other things. There's all kinds of flavour in these lettuce leaves. To
paraphrase Tina Fey, I want to go to there.
I've already been there. And I didn't tell my wife Shannon what it was going to be.
Yeah.
I put it together. It took me maybe 45 minutes, like 20 minutes prep, 20 minutes actual cooking. When I put it on the table, she was like, how is it? You are normally not this good.
Well, that's my burning question. Did you tell her it was Blue Apron, or did you masquerade as though you had just prepared this
I told
out of nowhere?
I told her it was Blue Apron. You know me, I've got no subterfuge in me at all. But I've also normally got no organisational skills, and Blue Apron really helped me put it together, right? It gives you all the ingredients that you need, and it gives you the step-by-step.
Yeah.
Here's what you do in this order. That way Darryl doesn't accidentally burn anything.
That's actually what it says in the instructions, which is very helpful. Also very helpful is that you can check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals for free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/TSS.
You'll love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron. It's true, I did. So don't wait.
That's blueapron.com/TSS. Blue Apron, a better way to cook.
So you said we were going to talk about midfielders and forwards.
Sure.
I want to say this is weirdly a simpler conversation than goalkeepers and defenders. I put it to you, Taylor Rockwell, that there is only one spot up for grabs in midfield.
I would agree, because I think if you look at what the needs are for the U.S. national team, they're going to want a couple of defensive midfielders, a couple of attacking midfielders, and some wide midfielders. I think defensively, you've got Michael Bradley. You've probably got Dax McCarty.
Bruce was really up on Dax McCarty, right?
Yes.
He said he's doing great. I expect him to be. He even gave a little smile.
He smiled and said he is in my plans. He opened the season in good form, and he played well against Jamaica. I think all of that speaks to, especially the he is in my plans, I think it means McCarty's going to be in.
Is that the giveaway?
Yeah. I think in terms of like your attacking central midfielder, it probably sticks with the standard, or what has become the standard for Bruce Arena, not in the past, was Benny Feilhaber and Sasha Kleshton.
Yep.
And then in terms of could be central or could be wide, you could have Darlington Nagbe and Christian Pulisic, Jermaine Jones in there as well, like we mentioned, and that leaves maybe Alejandro Bedoya and Fabian Johnson as your wider midfielders.
And again, so we've put Jermaine Jones on the board. If people saw the photo, he's underlined because, again, like Chandler, he is suspended for the Honduras game, but he'll probably play against Panama. We could get all of this wrong. This could also, he could change his mind and just leave off Jones and Chandler and say, I'm just going with what I've got. Right.
He could.
But essentially, because there's already the defensive guy, already the attacking guys, already the potential wide guys, the missing spot in the midfield is essentially a replacement for Jermaine Jones.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, because you probably want, just in case Michael Bradley can't go or Dax McCarty can't go, you want another kind of defensive option if you want to in there.
And just someone energetic as well. Someone who is essentially not a carbon copy of Jermaine Jones, because that would be scary. There can be only one Jermaine Jones. But someone who can do similar jobs in terms of covering a lot of ground, providing some defensive cover, also providing an attacking threat. And the two names that come to my mind are Sebastian Lletget and Kellen Acosta.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah?
I think it will be one of those two. I think it's important to note here that Bruce Arena, when asked about MLS players and what do you think of MLS, he again went out of his way, I would say, to say I am going to watch, I am going to be in person to watch FC Dallas and Sporting KC this weekend.
He did say that, didn't he?
Excuse me, other way around. I apologize. SKC v Dallas.
Okay, yeah,
but still,
so
same point.
That means he's potentially watching Hedges and Zimmerman. Maybe not for this. Sorry, Hegeman.
Oh, thank you.
The
Okay,
Hegeman. He's potentially watching those guys. Yeah. Maybe not for this roster, but maybe for the future. Kellen Acosta, I think, player to watch in that game. You remember he didn't play in January or February, because it was one again in February, but it's because he got injured just before, right? He was definitely in the plans. Started the MLS season strong, scored a goal already. So I think he'll be there to watch Kellen Acosta. And then for Sporting KC, I think you've got to check up on Graham Zusi at right back, make sure that's all going well. Against DC, I thought really good.
I thought he was okay. I mean,
the crossing was not
I thought
ideal.
defensively he was okay.
Excellent, up against not much of a threat.
Well, there's that.
Yeah. But then you got Benny Feilhaber, you got Matt Beasler in that game.
So
for
other
Sporting
players,
KC.
But I think you're right then that if he says he's going to watch that game, I think it is definitely to see Zusi and Feilhaber specifically. I think the other names you mentioned are definitely in consideration.
Beasler,
but I think Acosta also definitely in there for that reason, because he can play that role, and he's started the season well. And then I think Sebastian Lletget, again, another player that we, coming out of those January, February games, said, yeah, we could see this happening. We could see him replacing Jermaine Jones. I think, hilariously, at least for me, that I was talking about, it'd be nice to see him play the Jermaine Jones role at club level, where he plays with Jermaine Jones. So that was a little strange. But I think for that reason...
The Jet's a good option because he offers you a defensive midfielder or a wide midfielder. He can do a bit of both.
Yeah. Right? I think I give the edge to Lletget just because he did play those two games. I think Arena was pretty impressed by him. I think Arena, even as I want to say, I could be wrong, but I want to say he said, I expect him to play defensive midfield for LA. I expect him to continue. He kind of knew some things that I think were going to be happening in much the same way that he thought Zardes would be playing up top. Yeah. So it makes me feel like he's got some insight into what Lletget is doing and what he's going to be doing. Yep. And that makes me feel like maybe he just has the edge a little bit, but who knows what happens this weekend.
Okay. Speaking of Kellen Acosta.
Yeah.
the one good thing from this weekend, from this this Bruce Arena Q&A, he did not mention Acosta even as the 8th choice possibility.
He did not.
At left back.
Yep.
Right? There was no idea of like, and of course Kellen Acosta can play left back.
Yeah.
Not his role.
He also didn't, I think, mention Kellen Acosta.
No, he didn't, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, we just kind of put that one together on our own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, to the forward line?
Yeah, other than to add that, I mean, there are other, in terms of like the squad that we think could be in there, like maybe Paul Arriola. He did mention Paul Arriola, who did score, I think, yesterday.
Doing it for Tijuana.
He is indeed. So maybe Arriola gets a little bit of a look, but I wouldn't say that with any confidence.
No, yeah, but he could be like the extra guy. He maybe could be in place of one of those other wide guys. Yeah.
Yep.
Ooh, okay. At the forward line.
Yep.
Josie Altidore.
Yep.
Bobby Wood.
Yep.
Jordan Morris.
Yep.
Barring injury, those are nailed on.
I think so.
They've got to be, right?
Yeah.
And is that it?
I mean,
Terrence Boyd's not making it. Aaron Johansson's not fit enough. Or hasn't had a run.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he mentioned Julian Green, he being Arena.
He has to do something special for that, though, right?
I think so. I think he mentioned Julian Green when asked about Julian Green. When asked about the players who were doing well in Europe, he did not mention Julian Green. So I think that gives you some insight. I think Julian Green, if anything, is probably a Gold Cup consideration, as was, say, Lyndon Gooch. I think the big name here, because, as we said, you need to add 3 more players. So we've already added a left back. We've added a midfielder. I think that leaves maybe Clint Dempsey.
Maybe. It was really interesting what Arena said about Dempsey, right?
Yeah.
Which, obviously, he's a fan of Dempsey because if you're picking a US team, how can you not be?
Right.
Right. But he did say, I'll be watching him this weekend to see what did he say? If he's a little bit sharper, if he's a little bit fitter. He said, implying that his performance against Houston was maybe not as sharp and fit as Bruce Arena wants for a World Cup qualifier.
Yeah. He said, we need to be cautious. It's good to see him play this weekend and follow him this weekend. But we want to see him increasing his workload and getting sharper, which I put a question mark next to because I was also kind of surprised by that.
He did lose that ball for one of Houston's goals, but it was a weak-ass pass from Ladero. So
and then I think the other telling part of it was we want to be smart and see if he's ready to play, but I'm confident he will be part of the team in 2017.
Yeah, but that's almost suggesting, but maybe not in March.
Yeah, it's a way of saying he's definitely in consideration, but maybe not immediate consideration. But as you said, I think, or as you said off air, excuse me, if Dempsey comes out and blows people away this weekend and gets 2 goals or gets 2 assists and looks really lively, maybe he is in there as that kind of final inclusion on the roster.
Okay, the other names, like really on the outside, but Chris Wondolowski was in the January camp, played, right? Looked excellent for San Jose.
Yes,
last
agreed.
week.
100%.
Right? I forgot who they played. Montreal. Yes, San Jose, Montreal. Like I honestly was there to watch Tommy Thompson, but I saw a lot of Chris Wondolowski.
Yeah,
he had the assist on that Annabelle Godoy goal. Good performance from Wondolowski. I think all the Wondolowski haters and it's all really stemming from that Belgium miss, mostly, right? I know there's all kinds of layers to this. But when you see him play for San Jose, you're like, oh yeah, I see why this is a guy you would select for the national team.
Yep, and so I could see him in there, much to the chagrin of a lot of people. And the only other name maybe that like we could kind of see in there from an attacking standpoint is Juan Agudelo.
The unfortunate thing for Juan Agudelo is that due to weather, the New England Orlando game has been called off.
Right.
That really goes against him because he misses the chance to maybe score a hat trick and really make a name for him. Not make a name for himself. Catch Arena's attention this weekend.
And you know how good I am, Daryl? I'm going to say this right now, based on the fact that it's been canceled for inclement weather.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this game was being played in New England. No big deal.
Fair. Good job, Ty.
Not a lot of snowstorms in Orlando, I don't think.
Not the kind you're thinking of.
Yeah.
All right, so Bruce will name his roster Wednesday, March 15th.
Right.
I'm pretty confident we've got a good read on it. I guess we'll compare it to our chalkboard when that happens, and we'll offer some analysis when it is released as well. Anything else that you took from this Q&A? I've got a couple of things that set off alarm bells in my head.
Sure. One I think is just that Bruce Arena is very smart. He really is, because I mean I knew he's very smart tactically, and I guess this plays into tactics, but just the way he answers questions, it's like his brain, I feel like he's able to compartmentalize. And I think he's able to answer the question while also hearing himself answer the question and follow up with the necessary information without being like, oh, and I forgot to say this. Because it was a lot of we want to win. But if we don't win, that's okay. Or we want to do this, but there's this.
Yeah, it's like he is a time traveler who says a thing, flashes into the future and sees a version of it where people say, oh, you said this would happen and then it didn't. And then he comes back and covers himself for that.
Yeah, the one big big one that stood out was somebody asked if it, like I think I mentioned this previously, if it had been a difficult transition to go from LA to the head of the national team. And he was basically like, to be honest, not really. It's the same routine as it was last time.
But I think he's doing it from the same StubHub Center office that he used to do the LA.
But he says, but like, I have greater resources, and kind of went on that for a second and said, but it's always a very demanding, difficult job to be the head coach of the national team.
It started to sound like it was easy, right?
And it absolutely felt like he's going to get a 0-0 draw on Honduras, and then all you're going to hear is like, he said it was easy, but he can't even get a goal.
Yeah.
And so he did a good job to cover, and there was a few other moments like that in this Facebook Live conversation.
The one thing that set off something in my head, you remember I've been saying to you, and I'm sure we talked about the show, that I think he's been dropping some heavy hints that the Gold Cup roster for this summer will be experimental, meaning maybe no Bradley, Altidore, none of the sort of mainstream names, and it'll be about giving guys a chance. Like maybe the centre-backs will be Hedges and Zimmerman, for example. Right? Hegeman, sorry. He gave me a look. But he said something really interesting this time, which was essentially that we'll see how the World Cup qualifiers go before we decide what to do with the Gold Cup roster. And the heavy implications seem to be that he wanted it to be experimental, but if things are going badly in World Cup qualifying, we might need to just have these guys together for the Gold Cup, almost as a... You guys need to play some more games together and get better kind of situation.
Basically, he was asked, how do you think your World Cup roster will compare to your Gold Cup roster? And
that was the question.
And his response was, I don't know. If we win all 4 World Cup qualifying games, then we will test young players in the Gold Cup.
Okay. He said it more succinctly than I did.
Yeah, but he said...
I summed his words up in long form.
But again, he then... Well, see, but this is where he's clever. And this is where he's probably better than both of us because he can be succinct. Is that he then added, basically, our qualification is our number one goal, but... winning the Gold Cup is also our number one goal, essentially. We have 2 number one goals. I think one slightly higher than the other.
Yeah,
but I think
that would make a good 2017.
Yeah, and so I think he was wise to not overly commit to one and make it sound like he doesn't care about the other. And I think then you're correct that basically the priority is we want to win these games, we want to get these 4 results, and then we'll look at the Gold Cup and see what we need to do there.
All right, final thing on this arena. I've just realised that as we're talking about it, we're almost being very Bruce Arena fanboyish.
Yeah.
Almost stands is a word I learned in the last week.
Yeah.
Are we just giving him too much credit just because we're so happy that, we thought Klinsmann needed to go and finally did, and now here's Bruce Arena and we're feeling good about it? Are we giving him too much credit? I was saying earlier that it's great that he might have Beasley and Gonzalez back in because he knows those guys. I've thought in my head so many times that this coach is just relying on the guys he knows and not giving new guys a chance. So we're being too generous to Bruce Arena. And if so, what is the thing that might turn us on him at least a little bit, especially in terms of this roster selection?
What's up, leading questions? My answer is no. I don't think we are being too generous to Bruce Arena because I don't think there's much to be generous or not generous about with this.
Right.
It's not as though he said anything particularly mind-blowing in this. He didn't say we're gonna play a 3-4-1-2 now and we're gonna see it He didn't really change anything.
That was jealous.
Yeah, and he didn't say anything that was sort of outside of what he's been saying, and he didn't really give us anything that was particularly controversial. It was basically if we had picked our roster before he did this Facebook Live, we would have been pretty close, I think.
We wouldn't have put Beasley in it.
Maybe not. But actually, see, I think we might have because he put him on the January. We would have at least had him in the conversation.
Okay,
and so I think he is kind of being consistent in that roster selection. I think there are, again, when we were talking about who would we have as as defensive midfielder from the players who are playing abroad, and I said Perry Kitchen, we heard a lot of people say it should be Danny Williams. He's been doing really well. So there are going to be people who are frustrated with some of these selections, especially if you have Beasley and Wondolowski in there. People are going to say one's old, one shouldn't be there. They both have had their chances. And I think that you could go either way on that one.
Yeah, I agree on that. I also think maybe it's okay. Maybe this is just the honeymoon period.
Yeah.
Right? This is what we're in now. I think the Honduras-Panama games are the key test, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think 4 points is an acceptable result from that, and then we can continue being positive about it. If he sort of is too timid or overly aggressive and we get caught, Bruce Arena's set up, I think then we might start being oh.
Yeah. And I'll go one step further to say I don't think 4 points is acceptable, and I don't think Bruce Arena does either. I think again he was being very intelligent with his. We want
and
1
not saying 6 points is the
It was
he did that time machine thing again.
He says we're going to be
almanac back.
Yeah, well, I'll way to Panama, aggressive on the road, but at least 1 point, hopefully 3 is basically what he said. And I think what he actually meant was we're getting 3, but he didn't want to say we're definitely going to go down there and get that win. Don't you worry, because he's being cagey.
All right, looking ahead to the future, we didn't talk about on the show that the Gold Cup, the US's group has been announced, and the locations of the games have been announced. So I've got them written down here in front of me. I'll just read them to you, Taylor.
Please do.
I'll read them as if you don't know. Okay, so the US's group is Panama, Martinique, and the winner of the Nicaragua-Haiti playoff.
Right.
Okay, July 8th, we play Panama. This is our Gold Cup group. July 8th in Nashville. July 12th, we play Martinique in Tampa. And then July 15th, we play either Nicaragua or Derek Etienne Jr.'s Haiti in Cleveland. I kind of want it to be Haiti because I want to see Etienne at the Gold Cup.
And Arena did comment on this before he got questions. Can you guess which of those three opponents he said was going to be a difficult match?
I'm going to say Panama.
No, it was actually Martinique. No, it was definitely Panama. It was definitely Panama. He said they become a strong team in our region. It's going to be a really difficult match.
They beat Honduras in Honduras not so long ago.
Yeah, they're
in November.
Good. Yeah. They're decent. Yeah, there's some people in there.
Annabelle Godoy's chip.
There you go.
Yeah, Cooper's running.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll preview all this when we preview all this
sure will.
when we get to it. Speaking of previews, we are going to talk Minnesota, Atlanta after the weekend. We're going to watch that game because we want to look at the two new boys in Major League Soccer and see what's up, right? I think this is good scheduling from MLS.
Yep.
You give each of these teams a game, then you pit them against each other, and you see who's best. And I think the loser gets unexpanded.
Is that how it works?
Yeah,
that is ruthless.
Yeah, it's ruthless.
We just want to draw 150 million.
Yep. And you're
okay.
out. Yeah.
No, I think you're right though.
Accelerated promotion relegation.
You're right though. Well, first of all, you're not right about the unexpansion. I'm sure there's a word for that. But I think
contraction.
There we go.
The losing team gets contracted.
Since I think it's happened before. But it is also smart because, as we've heard time and time again, being an expansion team is very, very difficult. And I feel like there was probably a decent chance that both of the expansion teams would lose, given that they're playing tough opposition in tough situations.
One of them a win.
And so basically, it's like, all right, but the second week, someone's getting a point, or at least 1 point at least. Yeah.
All right, so we'll be reviewing that game probably on Monday, right? I can't commit to Sunday night, I don't think. Probably on Monday we'll be reviewing that game. But also, the reason to watch certain MLS games for certain things this weekend is the US men's national team roster, right? Everything we just talked about with Bruce Arena, he'd set up so many things of like the choice between like Leggett and Acosta. All of that could be decided on what we see this weekend. Because
I mean, he really did emphasize that like we're going to be watching these games. It's very important over the next 2 weeks because that's our short-term plan is the World Cup qualifying roster. So the next 2 weekends are critically important.
And here's what I'll bet you Bruce Arena has. I'll bet Bruce Arena has, unlike us, an MLS Live subscription with no blackouts. Because when I accidentally tried to click on a game that was blacked out because it was on national TV, and it says this user does not have access to this game due to TV blackouts, which means there are other users who do.
I would say.
I'm going to say
he does.
I'm going to say MLSsoccer.com staff, probably head coaches, Bruce Arena.
Yeah, I mean, he said that he didn't say he has that.
I'm jealous,
privilege,
is what I'm saying.
but when he was talking about the resources, again, another smart thing he did. I'm saying thank you for bringing that up because it reminded me. Another thing he did was not just say we've been watching this guy, we've been keeping tabs on him, he's really good. He dropped a few like, oh yeah, I've talked to him in person, or I was at his Bundesliga 2 game, or I talked to him on the phone, or we've watched a lot of his game tape. Like he kind of gave you
that detail.
Yeah, he kind of gave you all those little specific details here and there to demonstrate what he's doing, as opposed to sort of, we're keeping an eye on him and we're seeing what he's doing and he's doing great stuff. Yeah, he's no specific comments there, but more so than just like going to Soccer Way and seeing the result and being like, oh, he got 12 minutes. So he played 12 minutes. That's a good sign. That not saying anyone has done that, but it makes me happy that he's out there doing the legwork.
All right, here are a few other things to keep an eye on this weekend. Dax McCarty for the Chicago Fire.
Right.
Who are they playing? We've got it on the board. They're playing Real Salt Lake.
Yep.
So Bruce gave that little smile. We think McCarty's in, but a good performance this weekend for Chicago, probably seal it. So if you're just going to look around MLS and watch some highlights, keep an eye on Dax McCarty's performance this weekend.
You could also keep an eye on Dax's former club, the New York Red Bulls. They're playing Colorado because you want to see if Tim Howard gets some minutes in that game. And
I would even say just look at the starting lineup.
Yeah.
Is Tim Howard in it? And if yes, then he's making the US national team roster. If no, then he's probably not.
Yeah,
it's that simple.
It's not like Pablo Mastroeni's going to be like, Timmy, get 10 minutes at the end of the game. Yeah, that's not really how it works.
Yeah, run out there, Timmy.
But so that's worth checking.
Go and do your Ter Stegen.
Yeah, sure. But then we also, we did kind of gloss over that we have Kleshton in there. I think he will be, but he hasn't had a very strong start to the season, so it's probably worth seeing what he does this weekend at home with the Red Bulls.
I'd like to see Kleshton sort of back in form, not just because it's kind of a pleasure to watch when he's setting up goals, putting assists in, firing in free kicks. But it's also just painful to see someone go from how he was at the end of last season to sort of struggling this season. Yeah. All right, so keep an eye on Kleshton and keep an eye on Timmy Howard.
Yes.
And don't just see if he starts the game, see if he finishes it. because you want to keep that adductor together.
Yeah, right.
For the whole 90 minutes.
That's important. You said somebody who started the last season well, but ended maybe or hasn't gone well so far. Let's flip that around and say somebody who didn't have a great end of the season last year, but has started okay this far. Is Clint Dempsey.
Yeah.
And he is
I'm sure he had
a
celebratory end to the season.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true.
He was obviously, that irregular heartbeat was causing him some worry, I would imagine, like wondering whether he'd play again or not.
Yep.
So he said, he played last weekend.
Yep.
He scored.
He did.
Bruce Arena seemed to think that he wasn't quite ship enough, fit enough, wasn't quite sharp enough. That's what I did. I combined.
I like ship. That works. Yeah.
So keep an eye on Clint Dempsey against Montreal. Like we said, if he scores 2 goals and there's a little fire emoji next to his name all over Twitter, he might make that US national team roster.
He might. Yeah. And then, so you mentioned we're going to watch Minnesota-Atlanta. I'm very excited about that game. I'm very, very excited about FC Dallas and Sporting KC. Sporting KC at home, as we mentioned, just for all of the names that are in there and just to see...
Acosta's big chance.
Yeah, and just because I really actually enjoyed... I say actually because I was rooting for DC United, but I really enjoyed watching Sporting KC as much as you can in a 0-0 draw. I thought there was a lot to be excited about with that squad.
I've just realised, Benny Feilhaber was really enjoyable to watch. He had some nice moves in midfield. It's going to be Benny Feilhaber against Kellen Acosta.
Ooh,
that's going to be almost a direct matchup.
That'll work.
Yeah, and you'll also get a glimpse at Espinoza, Sporting KC midfielder, who'll be playing for Honduras.
As well, yep.
Yeah. Okay, so maybe keep an eye on what's going on in that game.
Yep, and then if you want to talk about maybe players to keep an eye on for the future, you probably want to watch San Jose, Vancouver.
Oh yeah, Tommy Thompson hype train was really leaving the station last week, San Jose's performance. Jackson Ewell, I want to see play.
Did not play last week. Wasn't even on the bench, I think. So.
No, he wasn't even on the bench.
Possibly?
Maybe possibly.
Might could be.
Vancouver... Kakuta Mane.
Yep.
He's still one for the future when his paperwork is all in order. He's a potential US national team.
And if you're one of our Canadian listeners, Alphonso Davies.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of young, kind of good.
I saw him linked with, it was the classic sort of tabloid newspaper rumours linked with some Premier League teams.
Get out of here.
I think they've just been like, oh, there's a good player who's under 17. Let's link him with Premier League teams.
Yep. Closer to home, even though they're on the road, is DC traveling to NYCFC.
Yeah, weirdly no NYCFC players I can think of challenging for this US national team. Think because Mix Discrude is now, I believe, on loan at Gothenburg. I believe that went through today.
I believe it did. Yes.
DC, maybe Bill Hamid. Maybe. Steve Birnbaum.
Well, I mean, Bill Hamid will be there, but in terms of people who might make this roster, it's maybe Bill Hamid.
Right.
And then probably Steve Birnbaum.
So let's see how Birnbaum does with David Villa.
Oof.
An impressive performance. If he can keep David Villa as quiet as he kept Dom Dwyer, then maybe Birnbaum almost certainly there's a lot of qualifiers, makes the US national team roster.
Yep. Mentioning the game for the third time, Minnesota-Atlanta.
Yes, review on Monday.
Yeah, but also because if we're going specifically with the US roster, Greg Garza, we want to see what he does. Yep.
I'm going to go formal. Gregory Garza. We'll keep an eye on Garza at left back.
It's actually Grigorovich Garza. I don't know if you knew that. Yeah. Okay. And then the final one with US men's national team implications, or that we really want to pay attention to, because Houston has, I think it's Houston-Columbus.
Yeah.
We'll trap, I guess, a little bit, but we're not sure if he's in there.
Ethan Finley's on the outs.
Yeah, and then Houston, we're pretty confident in what we know from DeMarcus Beasley, but maybe Houston is one for later on as we're preparing for that Honduras game. Yeah. But I'd say the big one that remains is LA-Portland, because we want to see what Sebastian Lletget is doing for LA.
He's the one on the bubble, right?
Right.
On the bubble of making the 23. Yeah, it's all about that performance.
But then we also want to see, I just personally want to see Jermaine Jones and Darlington Nagbe, because why not?
Why not?
Yeah.
Ooh, I don't think I've ever seen them go up against each other. I mean, maybe Colorado played Portland last year and I didn't catch it.
Yeah.
So that's
or New England at some point, I'm assuming.
But we can't watch 90 minutes of all these games.
No,
we can't.
No.
We could maybe watch some of the extended highlights.
We could, but then our wives would murder us.
So I'm maybe going to ask listeners to keep an eye on, especially if it's a team you support is involved in this, the things we just listed that are US national team sort of specific. Let us know what you see.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, I think so.
Does Darlington Nagbe sort of do a roulette and leave Jermaine Jones in his dust in LA Portland, for example? Or does Jermaine Jones smash him to the floor? Because those are the two ways that could go.
I think we know the answer.
It could be either. I've got faith in both men.
I've got faith in Jermaine Jones to smash Darlington Nagbe at least once.
All right, I want to close with a final bit of news, just because I think this is worth sharing with our listeners, because it's interesting. There was a story came out, yesterday? CONCACAF president announced that we are out of the preliminary stages of discussions about another Copa America I'm going to call it a Copa America Centenario style tournament because you can't call it Centenario unless it's until we get to 3016. So a combined CONCACAF CONMEBOL Copa America tournament. He suggested it would be in 2020.
Yeah.
So this could be on the books. This could be a regular thing where the US gets to play in a Copa America tournament.
Yeah. And
probably hosted in the US.
Since we're catching up on like bits and bobs, I'm going to go bad news, good news. I'm going to go the bad news that also broke this week was Gianni Infantino, FIFA president, saying that it would be difficult for the United States to put a World Cup bid in and have it be accepted, just kind of with current immigration rules and the concerns that would generate. So that's worth keeping an eye on. But then the positive thing that we can talk about is who's coming to NWSL, my friend.
Marta.
Yep.
Marta joined the Orlando Pride.
Yep.
Yeah, that keeps NWSL exciting. Yeah.
And for those of you who are wondering how would the Orlando Pride manage to replace a huge name like Alex Morgan, they done did it.
Who will be coming back as well. So they may be on the field together at some point. You could see Marta and Morgan later in the
Ali
season.
Krieger, Ashlyn Harris. Let's do it, Orlando.
Yeah, all right. So, NWSL starts in April, I believe. So we've got a little way before that league kicks off.
All right.
Okay, Taylor Rockwell, thank you, sir, for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you, sir, for doing the same. I want to add one more time that we've got that the trivia competition at Penny Lane here in Richmond.
If you are in Richmond or a reasonable driving distance, soccer trivia night, Thursday, March 23rd, 7 p.m. at Penny Lane. We'll be hosting a trivia night. Please let the people know.
Yeah. And if you're not, if you're driving in, stay the night. You've got the Irish Festival in Churchill. You've got lots to do in Richmond, so you can make a weekend out of it. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Come see the Kickers on Saturday.
There we go. Beautiful.
All right.
Plans are being made, folks. Plans are being made.
Listeners, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you again on Monday.